So you're just getting started collecting in miniature wargaming. And the natural question, of course, given finite or reasonable resources, what is a good starting approach to building your collection in terms of acquisition? Not so much sources, but the actual models themselves, allowing things to organically evolve, yet still making sure that the miniatures that you purchase or the units that you purchase will have value and will have a place in your play style moving ahead. If you're not careful, it starts out really easy. A few miniatures, an army or two, and then next thing you know, everything's out of control. And admittedly, I'm not the best example to follow with this because I tend to kind of go all into various miniature games. But the starting point, of course, is going to depend on your system. Some systems are a little bit easier than others. If you're playing historical war games, my smallest, easiest to build, and least expensive army, my DBA Romans. It's 6 stands of miniatures, 3 or 4 on a stand, and 2 of them are siege weapons. That's the entire army. The box itself was $35, and I think I dropped $350 on a ballista because I liked the look of it compared to what was packed in on the box. That's an example. You buy the army and you're essentially done and good. Stepping it up a little bit, World War II Chain of Command, my armies there are a little bit bigger, but being a historical war game, the units are represented. The most common units are represented in the game, and that's it. Nothing's really changing or being added in. Then we have something like BattleTech, where, and again, I'm just giving examples from my own collection. BattleTech, there's a lot of mechs, there's a lot of tanks, there's a lot of vehicles, there's different eras on there, whether it's Star League, Fall of the Star League, Succession Wars, Jihad, the clans, Clan Invasion, Dark Age, all this type of stuff. That collection starts out small. You pick a time period, and it grows very quickly. But you'll always be able to use your miniatures. Then you have something like Games Workshop, Warhammer 40,000, where the units, this is the hardest game, I believe, to effectively buy for because the units are always changing. It's naturally part of their marketing strategy because it's a miniatures company as opposed to a war game. They're constantly getting you to buy not only new units, but cycle in and out units that are effective or not effective, upgrading, not upgrading, and just when you have your army set, they switch the rule list and you have to buy a new model to be competitive on there. And again, nothing wrong with that, but it makes getting started really, really challenging. I like to start in the beginning new. And what I mean by new is maybe a getting started set or hooking up with a plan to figure out what models to buy. It's very tempting to maybe buy secondhand, buy an army on eBay, or buy a lot, just literally LOT, like a lot of miniatures, and you might even be able to get a good deal. But in the beginning, you're learning the rules, you're learning the meta, you're figuring out your play style. Don't forget to lay over your play style. A lot of those miniatures you're not going to have a use for. There's a reason why an army's being sold, or the army might be a couple of editions back, or an type of experience or vision that doesn't quite mesh up. It's tempting, even if it's a pretty good deal. I mean, obviously, if it's so good, you have to do that. My first Tyranid army, I was never going to play Tyranids in 40K. And the irony being, I made a very big jump in my gaming evolution for 40K with my Samhan Warhost. A lot of my current strategies, I really, for my Chaos Space Marines and Black Templars, they're a direct result of Tyranids. And I have had so much fun playing Tyranids, I never was going to play the army. It was never my intention. First of all, because Brother Captain James played Tyranids back in the day when you had Gene Stealer Rush, where just Gene Stealers mobbed you, and Gene Stealers were actually scary. And he beat me so bad all the time, not only because the army was very powerful, but he's an excellent player. I had a permanent bias, forget Tyranids, just drop kick them over there. I hate them. But I went to the gaming club, and you guys know how these things kind of work out. I had just gotten paid, just cashed my check, and rather than going home, I made the fatal mistake of going directly to the club on there. And there's this Tyranid army, the Hulknids, this kind of green and brown painted army that had been around 4 or 5 different players at the club. So someone had the original army, another club member bought it, added miniatures to it, but painted it in the same style, so they matched 100%. Then added some other miniatures, another club member bought it, that club member traded it for Bicycle, then another club member had it, and the current club member was selling it for a ridiculously low price. I mean, it was crazy. It was a giant Plano box, hundreds of Gene Stealers, custom Carnifexes, custom Hive Tyrants, dozens and dozens and dozens of Gaunts, everything on there. Lictors, a mix of the old models, new models, conversions. I mean, it would be insane not to do this. And of course, what I really needed to have happen was fix the muffler and the exhaust on my car. I mean, it was literally hanging off. But I'm like, hey, let's buy a 40K Army because that makes total sense. And I'll just ride dirty from the popo for a while and hopefully don't get pulled over again for making tons of noise with my car. And, you know, in the end, look, it worked out because that car got junked 6 months later. But I still got the Army, so that's a win on there. So if you get a great deal, yes, absolutely. But to just try and randomly buy stuff in the beginning, not the best. Now, the most ideal thing would be if you're part of a gaming group to be able to buy before you try. This is why I love doubles games, because you get to see a number of units in action. You might be able to play some units. You know, if you're just new to Space Marines and we're hanging out, you want to borrow some of my Black Templars, you know, absolutely. You could try out other units to see how they work, to see the core. You can get the opinion of people, you know, literal intel on the ground, what units are working, what models are there, and what you're looking to do is build a core group of evergreen units. Might be a few, you know, Battletech, there's probably 8 Inner Sphere, there's probably 8 to 10 mechs that the design of them, the stock design, in my opinion, is so good. Catapult's one of them. It's always going to have a place. It's always going to have a place in your collection on there. You're always going to utilize these mechs. Even if you get into some of the crazier variants or you're like, look, Fritz, I like play style of big guns, whatever it's going to be. Evergreen. There's certain systems that units are evergreen on there. That's what you want to identify because that's going to be your core. And then from there, branch out based on your play style and branch out on some other units that what I would call are experimental. You know, they may work, they may not work, they may have some special rules, you might not lead with them, but they spice things up. They're going to be a lot of fun on there. And organically build and push out your collection in that way. Don't jump in too fast. Again, I'm giving you advice that I rarely follow. But, well, not totally true. Some systems I have showed somewhat restraint on there. But over time, adding to the miniatures in this way, there's always going to be a few for whatever reason you don't use as much. But this is going to allow you to build and acquire over the months, maybe over a year or two, massive, massive collections that when you look at, there's not going to be a single junk piece in there. Every piece of your collection is going to be ready and have a focused way of playing.